Go, pro! Sir Klaus Moser once said, education costs money, but then so does ignorance. That's why you should be proud of the fact that you're sitting here, and those watching on live stream, be proud of yourself as well. How many of you think that so far GPRM 2016 has been worth the investment? Ow! I agree. The good news is it is only just begun. We're just warming up, and it's going to keep moving. It is a privilege to introduce your next mentor. In fact, this was really exciting for me. About a year ago, we did GoPro Recruiting Mastery in the UK. Yeah, I know we've got a lot of folks from over across the pond who came over. But I have known of this individual because she's with a very substantial, very well-known, very rock-solid, one of those legacy global companies, and she's risen to be the top income earner. And so I knew of her, but I'd never met her. And when I got a chance to sit down with her and spend about 45 minutes well in advance so that I could properly introduce her, it was a thrill. You know, you meet some people like Jeff who have achieved at such a high level, but before you meet them, you wonder, is there an arrogance? Is there a, I'm so cool, you're not? The humility was amazing as I met this person. And she started to share her story. From a very young age, she came from a farming and equestrian background. So it was ingrained in her DNA to have no fear of hard work and understanding that hard work is what it takes. There's no easy way. And so what happened was, though, she realized that eventually this was not going to provide the income or the lifestyle for her family. And about 20 years ago, someone said, let me talk to you about leverage and a concept called network marketing. And she said, what was interesting is I didn't understand it, but something felt good about it. And I always go with my heart. So I said, fine, I'm signing up, I'm joining. But she said, Curtis, you need to understand, I didn't join to try it. I joined to succeed. So from day one, I said, I'm not going to start this, I'm going to launch it. And there's a great lesson in that. Ignorance on fire, and she flat out launched. She said, I went 24/7 as hard as I could. And after about 4 months, she said, I was at about $3,500, $4,000 a month. And I'd been watching it every month. It had gone up. And she said, it was one of my first defining moments. I was about $3,000, $4,000 a month. And I said, wow, okay, I can see it growing. Obviously it's gotten going, it's growing. She said, so I kind of took a breath and decided to step back. And almost like that, went from 3,000 or 4,000, boom, 800. She said, that's when I began to realize I was beginning to make money, but my team wasn't there yet. It is not about personal performance. That's what I've been used to. In farming, it was my personal performance. It's about leadership. You see, those who have reached the top, their biggest business they're in is not their product or service. They're in the business of leadership development, themselves first, and everyone they can possibly touch for the rest of their lives. And that's what she did. She said, I now understood what it was. 3 years later, I was at a permanent six-figure income. 4 years after that, 7 years in, I would never have to work again. I put in more hours today, she says, than I ever have, and I don't work one of them. It is a labor of love and passion. She travels the world, has got a team of over 500,000 in over 50 countries. She supports charitable foundations in Africa, and she spends her time on the road giving. She is a servant leader. And the cutest thing about when I met her at GoPro in the UK is I said, so how are you feeling? And she said, I'm so nervous, I'm shaking. I said, why? I said, there's only about a couple thousand people here. She said, yeah, I've spoken to so many more at my company events, but it was my company. They're my people. They're my family. These are strangers. I have to give them value. So I saw her backstage, said, well, it ought to be easy now. You're doing it again. She says, no, there's more people. I'm more scared. It's the power of having a heart that is bigger than your fear. Ladies and gentlemen, please get on your feet and welcome to the stage, the one and the only Miss Jayne Leach. Ow!
Oh, wow. This is a big room, and I feel very humbled to be here, to have had that incredible introduction from Curtis, and also just to say a massive thank you to Eric and Marina for giving me the honor of being here. It's a real privilege to serve so many people with some of my experiences. I don't really need to tell you too much about my background because Curtis has already so eloquently done that. So I kind of want to share something with you that I think was fundamental to where I am today. And understanding this has allowed me not only to achieve my success, but help many, many, many other people achieve the things that were important to them. You know, research shows that the average 1-year-old has heard the word no 400 times a day. That's kind of scary, right? It could just be a no, or it could be no, don't do that. You know, from well-meaning parents, from maybe siblings who love them, we want to stop them stepping outside of a comfort zone. By the time they're 5, they've heard the word no over 200,000 times. Isn't that incredible? And by the time they're teenagers, they've heard the word no over 400,000 times. And by the time they're adults, they've heard the word no many, 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 many more times than they ever have heard the word yes. And so you would think, wouldn't you, that we would all be used to hearing the word no. Wouldn't you? Comfortable with it, happy with it, no problem, no fear, doesn't worry me. But the reality is, for most people, and for me, that when we start out on our network marketing journey, our biggest fear, our biggest challenge, something that we have to overcome in order to achieve greatness, is learning how to handle the word no. 2 tiny letters that can stop somebody dead in their tracks. They may have all the dreams and the desires and the focus and the energy and the passion, but if they hear that word no too often, that passion can begin to dry and fizzle out, and questions and doubt starts to take its place. You know, I had to learn to handle the word no. I had to learn to not only handle it for myself, but to also help the many people in my team come to terms with it as well. Because the biggest sadness for me in my journey is seeing so many people that had so much potential, but allowed this one word to stop them in their tracks. You know, I had big dreams when I started out in this industry. And I was totally committed to making my dreams a reality. It was important to me that I gave my family everything that they wanted and needed. I'm not scared of hard work. And I went to work in making a plan to put my business into momentum. But I guess at that stage in my life, when I got to this point of wanting to put my business into momentum, I had a few personal issues. I'd just gone through a particularly difficult divorce, and 10 years of a challenging marriage, mental cruelty, someone telling you you're worthless every day. You actually sometimes begin to believe what's being said to you. So I had this deep down burning desire to achieve, to be successful. But in the back of my mind, I could hear this little voice saying, you're not worthy, you can't do this, you'll never achieve your goals. Who are you to think you can achieve greatness? But I knew deep down inside of me that I wanted to achieve something of real value. So I made a plan and I went to work. And what's really interesting, the very, very first person I ever introduced into this industry, the very, very first person I ever spoke to said, yes. And I thought, this is a piece of cake. It's just so easy. You pop around, you have a chat with someone, you show them what you're doing, they love it, they see what you see, and they join. Little did I realize what was going to happen in the next few weeks and months. I went to work. I went to work with a vengeance. Around the children and my existing commitments at that time, I literally put every single minute into building my network marketing business. But within 2 to 3 months, all I was getting day in, day out, literally week in, week out was no, it's not for me, no, not interested, no. And I was getting bombarded with it. It was freaking me out. And I'm sure there are many people in this room that have had that same situation. Well, here's a little bit of advice I'm going to share with you now. Let's go through why people say no. Let's have a look at why people want to say no to you. And the first thing is rejection. You know, rejection is a big challenge when we start out building our business. I was rejected day in and day out, literally. And rejection's hard. I don't think there's anybody in this room that can say they love rejection. I didn't. It used to stop me in my tracks. It used to make me question who I was, what I was doing. And what used to hurt even more was when my nearest and dearest and loved ones rejected me. That was hard. And it makes you question your choices, your decisions. Ridicule. This is such a tough one. This one was a really tough one for me to get my head around. We lived in a really small village, maybe about 200 or 300 people. And I remember being so excited about what I was doing and literally going around and seeing some of my friends and sharing with a passion and enthusiasm. And everybody on the face of it says, yeah, it sounds great. But little did I know, behind my back, they were all talking about me. And I remember one morning having a particularly difficult situation where I dropped the children off at school and I stopped at the local shop, and a friend of mine said to me, Jayne, what have you done to upset Fern? I said, what? She said, yeah, she's been going around the whole village telling everybody not to talk to you. I said, really? And this was supposed to be a friend? Ridicule is hard. Ridicule is tough. Because that's going on behind closed doors. You don't know what's going on, but you can kind of feel it. Does that make sense? You kind of know something's not right when you walk into a group of people you're normally very sociable with, and suddenly it goes a little quiet. Or they look the other way, they change the subject. That didn't feel great. And then people's opinions. Wow. Haven't people got opinions? And don't they like to share them with you? You know, people will say to me, you're not doing that thing, are you? And I would kind of go, well, yeah. Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I had a friend who had an aunt who had an uncle once. They tried it, didn't work for them. I wouldn't do that. It's like, okay. You'll never make any money doing that. Opinion after opinion after opinion. People's perceptions of what I was doing. You know, yesterday we heard Eric talk about mental strength. And I certainly think in those first few months that I started my forever business, I had to think about my mental strength. Was I able to overcome these challenges? And I think it got to a point where I almost questioned my own decisions. Maybe these people were right. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was never destined to be successful in this industry. And I nearly walked away. I nearly just said, this is too hard, too much hassle. I just don't need it. And then I had a bit of a paradigm shift one morning when I realized that the very people who were telling me it would never work, that I was crazy, that were ridiculing me, that were rejecting me, that were laughing at me, I realized these very people, they weren't going to pay my mortgage. They weren't going to pay the school fees that I wanted my children to go to. They weren't going to allow me to live the life I wanted to live. They weren't going to allow me to contribute to others. All they were going to do was steal my dreams. That's what they are. They're dream stealers. And in that moment, and I had that paradigm shift, I realized that I had to reconnect with my goal. I had to reconnect with what was important to me. It didn't matter what anybody else felt or thought. It was about me and my journey and the lives that I wanted to change. And at that moment, I realized that a winner is a dreamer, and they never, ever quit. Never, ever quit. It's always too soon to even begin to think about quitting. I always say if you have a bad hair moment or a bad hair day, you can have 5 minutes of self-pity, then get over it and move on. One of the things I had to understand was how to turn the no's into a yes. It was the yeses that was going to allow the business to grow. So I took a step back and I thought, what am I doing that is not allowing me to move forward? And I realized at that moment, it was all about the conversations. It was all in the communication that I was having with other people. It was the way I was interacting with them. You see, initially, I made it all about me. I made everything about me, my business, my opportunity, my journey. What I didn't realize, it should be nothing about me and everything about them. And I really began to look at how I began to communicate with others based on how I would have wanted someone to speak to me. And that took a little bit of what I call honesty. You know, if it is to be, it's up to me. There's no point blaming anybody else. But I realized that I had to build relationships with people. I had to find out what was important to them. I had to be more caring, more aware, and have to understand that it's not a one-stop shop. Sometimes your conversations, whether they be face-to-face, online, it's not the first conversation that bears the results. It could be many conversations down the line. And what I realized is that when you start communicating with people, this for me, this little bit that I'm sharing with you now was a game changer for me. Is when I started picking up the phone, having a chat, asking them how they were, what they were doing, how the kids were, how was work, did they have a great holiday, what have they got planned for Christmas. When I really got into them, I began to realize people opened up a lot more. Then at the end of the conversation, I just drop in why I was communicating with them, what I was passionate about, and why I would like to have a get-together with them. And here's the key thing. If at that time, before this moment, they said no, I put the phone down, that was it, end of story. No more communication with them. But at this stage now, because of my paradigm shift, because of my realizing it was more about them and not me, I actually was looking for the no's now. I didn't mind. I was ready to embrace them. So if I rang up my friend and she said, well, you know what, Jayne, it all sounds great, but no, not now. And I would just go, Chris, thanks so much for that. Thanks for your honesty. I really appreciate it. However, I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. And whilst the time may not be right for you at the moment, can we keep in touch? Can I give you a call maybe in a few weeks' time, update you on what I'm doing, and maybe find out a bit about where you are in your life? And guess what they said? They said, yes. In a heartbeat, in a conversation, just by reversing the no and saying, that's okay, I turn the no into a yes, but not right now in the moment. maybe in a month or 2 months' time, but that no became a yes. And what was absolutely fascinating for me is suddenly my diary was filling up with yes after yes after yes after make me have another call, get back in touch with me, let's touch base, let's see what's happening, tell me where you're at. It was phenomenal. Now, sometimes I call them back as arranged on the exact day and time that I'd arranged. I give them a quick call. Hey, how you doing? You know, we spoke a few weeks earlier and the timing wasn't right for you, and we agreed that we speak today. How's things? How's it been? I'd always make notes of our previous conversation that I could refer to. And sometimes they would show great interest, but they say, Jayne, you know, the timing still isn't right. I go, hey, that's no problem. This opportunity I want to share with you is too important for us not to get together. So why don't I give you a call maybe in 3 or 4 weeks' time? So every single no was turned into a yes, one way or another. Sometimes I could ring them up 4, 5, 6 times. On the 6th time, they say no, and I would say to them, you know what? I'm never going to stop calling you. Because this opportunity is too important, and I think too much of you. And I don't want you to miss it. So I pay a compliment. My 25th success line said no to me for 7 years. 7 years. I said to her, I'll get you one day. And I did. You see, that's about having a bigger vision than just in the moment. That's about knowing you're in this industry. You're not dipping your toe to have a go. You're not seeing if it will work. You are in and fully committed. That way, you'll wait for them. And when the timing's right, they'll come with you and you'll change their lives. But you got to understand, you don't worry about the no in the moment. You take them on a journey until the no in the moment becomes a yes. And then you change their lives. So I was having a lot of fun, turning the no's into a yes. My diary was full. I was speaking to people all over the place. I was actually loving it. And you know what that does to you? It completely changes your energy. When you're loving what you're doing, you have a different energy, a different spark comes off you. It's attractive to other people. They want to be around you. I was making the call. I was sending the text messages. I was starting the conversations. My friends, that's what you need to do. You need to embrace the activity, because the activity will never fail you. What most people do is fail themselves because they just don't do enough on a consistent basis. In my first year, I had no idea what I should do. My upline had only been in the business a few weeks before I had. I didn't really have any guidance. There was nothing like this when I first started in the industry. But I said to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to speak to 5 people a day. That's it. That's my commitment. That's my goal. Not 5 one day, 10 another day, and then nobody. 5 people a day. And I made that commitment. It was that consistency, the compound effect. You don't miss a day. You stick to it. From that 1,582 contacts I made, I had second meaningful contact with 502 of them. From those 502, that equated to 165 one-on-one conversation meetings, face-to-face meetings. And 33 joined my business, personally recruited in my first year in network marketing from a standing start. And it may not be many compared to a lot of people nowadays where they've got social media for a bigger reach. But let me tell you, from those 33 people recruited, mentored my first 6 in that year to go on to be some of the biggest success lines in the industry. Have gone on to turn over millions and millions of pounds worth of productivity and make millions and millions of pounds back for them and their team. So ladies and gentlemen, know your stats. Your stats will keep you on track to the bigger things that are possible in this industry. The average networker never hears the word no enough. They hear it a few times and they run away from it. The highly successful networker hears the word no many, many times on a daily basis. Are you average or are you above average? My goal for you all is, as we start a new year in 2017, have a plan. Break that plan down. Decide how many people you're going to speak to every single day and see how many no's you can go for. Because when you turn a no into a yes, everything that you want in life will come to be. 23 years ago, I was offered an amazing opportunity. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if it would work. But I know one thing. I wanted to do it, and I said yes. Every single one of you in this room has been given the greatest gift in the world, and that is the opportunity to build a future that will allow you to live a free life in the industry of network marketing. You may not know how to do it today, but I will tell you one thing. By the end of this weekend, you will. And my goal for you is to run out there and have the very best year in 2017 ever, with more no's than you've ever had before. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.